For once, Elon Musk sat still. No meetings, no phone calls, no rush, just a rare moment of quiet in his office. But his mind? That never stopped. A conversation with a colleague had planted an idea, one he couldn't shake. What if nobody knew who he was? How would people treat him if they thought he had nothing? The thought nagged at him, turning into something more than just curiosity. It became a challenge. A few weeks later, on a cloudy Thursday afternoon, he was ready. His disguise was simple but convincing. Secondhand clothes from a thrift store, sneakers barely holding together, and a wig that made his hair look unkempt and wild. A makeup team did the final touches, dulling the sharp, recognizable features that had graced magazine covers and flooded news feeds. When he looked in the mirror, he barely recognized himself. The billionaire innovator was gone. In his place stood a man who looked like life had knocked him down a few too many times. Now, he just needed the right place to test his theory. He chose the Copper Elm, an upscale restaurant in Santa Fe, New Mexico. It was known for its exclusivity, for catering to a certain type of guest. Not a place where someone dressed like him would fit in. But that was the point. He wasn't trying to prove anything. He just wanted to understand. Would people see beyond appearances, or would they judge him on sight? Taking one last glance at his reflection, he took a deep breath and stepped out the door. For the first time in years, he felt invisible. The drive to the restaurant was uneventful. Outside, the city moved along as usual, unaware of the experiment unfolding in the back seat of a modest car. But for Elon, every passing second built anticipation. When he reached the Copper Elm, he hesitated for half a second before pushing open the grand double doors. Inside, the restaurant radiated luxury. Crystal chandeliers cast a warm glow, polished tables sat perfectly arranged, and quiet conversations mixed with the occasional clinking of silverware. His entrance barely made a ripple. Patrons glanced up but quickly went back to their meals. The staff, however, weren't as quick to look away. As he stepped onto the pristine hardwood floor, he could almost feel the scuffs his worn-out shoes left behind. A hostess in a sleek black dress approached, her smile tight and uncertain. She looked him over, hesitating before speaking. "Can I help you?" Her tone was polite, but there was a strain behind it. Elon nodded. "Table for one." His voice was steady, calm. She flicked her eyes toward the bar, where a manager stood watching the interaction. The hesitation deepened. "We're fully booked," she said quickly, though Elon could see the empty tables behind her. He didn't argue. He just waited, letting the silence stretch, watching her expression shift under the weight of it. Across the room, a young server named Sophia caught the exchange. She had only been working at the Copper Elm for a few months, trying to save up for culinary school. Something about the man caught her attention, not pity, but curiosity. Before the hostess could dismiss him, Sophia spoke up. "I can seat him." The room went quiet for just a moment. Heads turned. Even the manager frowned. But he didn't stop her. Elon met Sophia's eyes and gave her a small, appreciative nod as she led him to a table tucked near the kitchen doors. It wasn't a prime spot, but it was a seat, and that was enough. "Thanks," he said, meaning it. She placed a menu in front of him. "Take your time," she said, ignoring the whispers starting to stir around the room. As Elon flipped through the menu, he paid attention to the people around him. Glances lingered, some curious, others downright dismissive. A few diners leaned toward each other, whispering about him. A server passed by, muttering to a coworker, "What's he even doing here?" Another one snorted, "This is gonna drive the regulars away." Elon listened, taking it all in. Every word, every glance, every shift in tone. It all painted a picture. When Sophia returned for his order, he kept it simple. "Just bread," he said. Her brow lifted slightly. "That's all?" "That's all," he confirmed. She didn't press him, just gave a nod and walked away, leaving him alone with his thoughts and the weight of 100 silent judgments. The stares didn't bother him. If anything, they told him exactly what he needed to know. People always talked about kindness and empathy, but how often did they truly practice it when it mattered most? The stage was set. Elon's experiment had only just begun. As he waited for his meal, the tension in the restaurant thickened. Conversations turned into hushed whispers behind napkins. A few diners shot him quick, judgmental glances before looking away. At a nearby table, a man leaned toward his companion and muttered, "What's management thinking? Letting someone like that in here?" Elon remained quiet, his focus on the room. He noticed everything. The way the hostess avoided looking in his direction, the bartender sharing a quiet chuckle with a server, the manager's occasional glances of disapproval. Every reaction told a story, each one reinforcing a truth about how people judged based on appearance alone. Then, Sophia returned. Balancing a tray, she carefully placed a steaming bowl of tomato bisque and a small basket of bread in front of him. She handled his meal the same way she would for any other guest, with care, without hesitation. "Enjoy your meal," she said, her smile warm and genuine. Elon met her gaze. "Thank you," he replied, sensing that her kindness was more than just good service. She meant it. As he ate, he watched her work the room. Sophia moved quickly but never seemed rushed. She took care of every table with patience, handling even the most demanding patrons with grace. No matter the attitude she faced, she never wavered. At one point, an older woman motioned her over, clearly irritated. With a slight tilt of her head, she gestured toward Elon. "Why are you wasting time on him?" the woman asked in a hushed but sharp tone. "People like that shouldn't even be allowed in here." Sophia's cheeks flushed, but she didn't falter. "I believe everyone deserves respect, ma'am," she said firmly. The woman huffed, dismissing her with a wave before turning back to her meal. Elon watched the exchange, impressed. It wasn't easy to stand up for someone society deemed unworthy, especially in a place like this. A few minutes later, as he finished his soup, a different server approached. He was in his late 20s, stiff in posture, his expression unreadable. "Are you planning to order anything else?" His tone was just a little too sharp, bordering on rude. "No, thank you," Elon said calmly. The server pressed his lips into a tight, forced smile before walking away. Under his breath, he muttered something Elon wasn't meant to hear. "Waste of space." Elon heard it anyway. He noted it. Across the room, a young couple exchanged nervous glances. The woman leaned in, whispering, "What if he asks us for money?" Her partner shrugged, but the discomfort was clear in his face. Elon remained composed, his mind absorbing every interaction, every assumption. This wasn't just about how he was treated. It was about how quickly people made judgments without knowing a single thing about him. As Sophia returned to clear his table, she hesitated for a brief moment. "Is everything okay?" she asked softly. Elon looked up, caught off guard by the sincerity in her voice. "Yes," he said, offering a small nod. "Thank you for your kindness." Her expression softened, and she returned the nod before walking away. In that single moment, he saw what he had been hoping to find, a glimmer of empathy in a sea of judgment. The tension in the room never faded, but Elon felt something shift inside him. The experiment was revealing more than he had expected. In the next part, that would take things to an entirely different level. He stood. The scrape of his chair against the floor drew immediate attention. Conversations died down. Diners turned their heads, watching as he made his way toward the center of the room. Their curiosity was laced with discomfort. Sophia's eyes followed him, unsure of what was about to happen. The manager, who had been observing all evening, was already moving toward him. His stride was brisk, his expression set. "Excuse me, sir," the manager began, voice clipped. "If you're finished, I'll have to ask you to leave." "Our establishment," Elon raised a hand, stopping him. His gesture was gentle, but firm. "I'll leave soon," he said evenly. "But before I go, I need to say something." A hush fell over the restaurant. The same people who had spent the evening sneering and whispering now sat still, watching, waiting. Slowly, Elon reached up and pulled the wig from his head. Gasps rippled through the room. He straightened, standing fully in his own skin, revealing the face that had been plastered across newspapers, business magazines, and television screens for years. Someone near the back whispered in disbelief, "Elon Musk?" He let the recognition settle. Let them feel it. "Yes," he said, his voice carrying through the silent room. "It's me." He paused, scanning the faces before him. And tonight, I didn't come here as the man you know. I came as someone you wouldn't have given a second glance. Someone you assumed was beneath you. Silence. I saw your stares. I heard your whispers. The weight of his words pressed down on every person in the room. And in that moment, the real lesson began. I witnessed judgment, Elon said, his voice steady but laced with disappointment, all because of how I looked. The weight of his words hung in the air, pressing down on the silent room. His gaze moved slowly over the diners, people who had whispered behind napkins, who had sneered, dismissed, and assumed. Then, he turned toward Sophia. But one person, he continued, his tone shifting, one person in this entire room treated me with kindness and respect. Sophia stood frozen, her tray still in hand. Elon gestured toward her. Sophia, step forward. Hesitantly, she set the tray down and took a slow step toward him, her face burning red. You didn't know who I was, Elon said, his voice firm but warm, yet you chose to treat me like a human being. And that is the kind of character that truly matters. She swallowed hard. I was just doing my job, she murmured, barely above a whisper. Elon shook his head. No, he said. You went beyond that. You showed empathy when it would have been easier to look the other way. Around them, the diners shifted uncomfortably. Guilt flickered across their faces. Some averted their eyes. Others watched Sophia, their expressions tinged with something that looked like admiration. Elon turned back to the room. To those of you who judged me tonight, he said, his voice calm but firm, let this be a lesson. Appearances deceive, but the way you treat others, that reveals exactly who you are. Then, reaching into his pocket, he pulled out a small envelope and handed it to Sophia. This is for you, he said simply. Her hands trembled as she carefully opened it. Inside was a handwritten note and a check. She read the words aloud, her voice shaky. Sophia, thank you for your kindness. Use this to follow your dreams. Culinary school, your own restaurant, whatever you choose. The world needs more people like you. Her voice broke on the last words. Tears spilled down her cheeks as the check fluttered from her fingers. Gasps rippled through the room. $50,000. Murmurs of shock and awe filled the air. The energy in the restaurant had shifted completely. Elon turned to the manager. And for this restaurant, he said, consider this a reminder to create a culture of respect for everyone who walks through these doors. The manager, visibly flustered, nodded but said nothing. Elon didn't wait for a response. He turned toward the exit, pausing only once to glance back at Sophia. Never lose that kindness, he told her. It's rare, and it's powerful. Then, without another word, he walked out. The door closed softly behind him. For a long moment, the restaurant remained silent. The people who had whispered cruel remarks minutes earlier now sat in awkward stillness, their faces flushed with embarrassment. A father at a nearby table sighed heavily, glancing at his teenage son. We shouldn't have judged him like that, he admitted. His son gave a small, silent nod. Across the room, a woman dabbed at her eyes with a napkin. What if we've done this before? She whispered to her partner. What if we've treated others this way without even realizing it? Sophia stood in the center of it all, still clutching the note, her emotions a storm of gratitude, disbelief, and pride. The manager approached her, his usual confidence now replaced with something much softer. You handled yourself well tonight, he said quietly. Sophia met his gaze, her own unreadable. Thank you, she replied, her tone polite but distant. She knew he had been one of the first to doubt Elon's presence. His change in attitude felt too little, too late. As the evening wound down, Sophia slipped into the kitchen for a moment, needing a breath. She unfolded Elon's note again, rereading every word. Then, beneath his original message, she noticed something she hadn't seen before. One final line, scribbled in smaller writing. Her heart swelled as she tucked the note into her apron pocket. When the last table was cleared and the restaurant began to shut down for the night, the usual light-hearted chatter among the staff was absent. Instead, there was quiet reflection. The night had changed something. At their usual end-of-shift meeting, The manager hesitated before speaking. "I think," he said slowly, "we all have something to think about after tonight." And for once, nobody disagreed. "Let's make sure this place represents what we say we stand for." The manager's words hung in the air, and Sophia caught a few glances from her coworkers. Some offered small, respectful smiles. She hadn't done any of this for their approval, but knowing that her actions had been seen and that they mattered felt good. That night, as she stepped out of the restaurant, the envelope tucked securely in her bag, she felt something shift inside her. Yes, the money would change her life, but the lesson she had witnessed, that would change how she approached the world forever. Outside, the city pulsed with its usual energy. Cars honking, streetlights flickering, people lost in their own lives. But to Sophia, everything felt sharper, more vivid. Elon Musk's experiment had left an imprint, not just on her, but on the restaurant and everyone who had been there to witness it. Because in the end, it wasn't about the money. It wasn't about fame. It was about the power of a single act of kindness and how it could ripple through even the most unexpected places. News of Elon Musk's undercover experiment spread like wildfire. Social media exploded with debates, praise, and criticism. Headlines ranged from "Elon Musk tests humanity at upscale restaurant" to "Billionaire rewards kindness in unforgettable experiment." The Copper Elm found itself at the center of attention, and not all of it was flattering. Comment sections filled with discussions about empathy, social judgment, and the way appearances shape perception. Some readers praised Sophia, while others questioned why kindness should even be rewarded in the first place. But no matter the angle, the story had struck a nerve. And Sophia? Her life changed overnight. Reporters sought her out, eager to hear her first-hand account. At first, the sudden spotlight overwhelmed her. But when she finally spoke, her words were simple, yet powerful. "It wasn't about knowing who he was," she told a journalist. "It was about treating someone with dignity, no matter their circumstances. That's something we should all do, not just for billionaires in disguise, but for everyone."